All characters and events in this story are the fruit of my imagination. If something seems like reality, it's just the stars aligning that way. Life is like a wheel, everything comes back in circles. Please don't judge too harshly. We are 100% against cheating, alcohol, anything prohibited, and any violation of the law. Write in the comments what city you are from and where you listen to this audio version. Share the vibe. Don't forget to like, tell your life story, and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with new exciting stories. Those who are faithful in love experience its tragedy, and those who are unfaithful experience its emptiness. Oscar Wilde. Elizabeth, 40, sat at the kitchen table in her suburban Chicago home, leafing through a fitness magazine. Her husband, David, an engineer at a construction firm, had just gotten home from work. Their three children, Nathan, Liam, and Sophia, were at home, each busy with their own projects. Outside, she could hear the sound of a neighbor mowing the lawn, and the house smelled of freshly brewed coffee. From the outside, their life looked perfect. A strong marriage, a cozy home, healthy children. But inside, Elizabeth felt an emptiness she couldn't explain. She blamed the extra weight she'd gained after Sophia's birth and the stress of her job as an accountant at a local firm. David walked into the kitchen, loosening his tie. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, but he was smiling, as he always did when he saw his wife. He was tall, about 6'3", with broad shoulders and a touch of gray in his dark hair. Despite his 42 years, he looked younger, especially when he joked with the children. "Hi, Liz," he said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. "How was your day?" Elizabeth put the magazine down and shrugged. "Fine. I was writing up reports, then picking up Sophia from the dance. What about you?" A typical day. Drawings, meetings. David opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of water. "But I agreed with the boss to leave early on Friday. Maybe we can go somewhere? Dinner? A movie?" Elizabeth nodded, but without enthusiasm. "We'll see. I have a lot of things to do at work, so I might be busy." David sat down opposite her, looking at her with a gentle smile. "You're always busy. Come on, Liz, let's get out. When was the last time we went somewhere together?" She sighed, looking away. "I don't know, David. I'm just tired, I guess." He reached out, covering her palm with his own. "You're beautiful, you know, even when you're tired. Maybe you need a rest. Let me make dinner and you lie down." Elizabeth forced a smile. David had always been like this, caring, helpful, but his words didn't touch her the way they once did. She felt guilty about it, but she couldn't bring herself to respond with the same warmth. "Thanks, but I can handle it. I still have to check Sophia's homework." At that moment, Sophia burst into the kitchen, her long brown hair pulled back into a messy ponytail. She opened the cabinet, looking for a snack. "Mom, can I go to Emma's after school tomorrow? She's having a party." Elizabeth frowned. "Sophia, you know you have dance practice. What kind of party is this? Who's going to be there?" "Come on, Mom. It's just at Emma's house, about 10 people. Her parents will be there." Sophia rolled her eyes, taking out a pack of crackers. "Dad, tell her it's okay." David grinned at his daughter. "If the parents are there, I don't mind. But you have to finish your homework before then, and no lateness, Sophie." "Hooray, thanks, Dad." Sophia kissed him on the cheek and ran upstairs. Elizabeth shook her head. "You're too soft with her." "She's a good girl, Liz. Just a teenager." David shrugged. "Remember what we were like when we were her age?" "Yes, but I didn't have a party every week," Elizabeth muttered, returning to her magazine. David looked at her, his smile fading slightly. "Liz, are you okay? You've been kind of distant lately." She looked up, feeling a twinge of irritation. "I'm fine, David. I'm just busy. Work, kids, home. Not everyone can be as energetic as you." He nodded, but there was a hint of worry in his eyes. "Okay, if anything happens, I'm always here, you know." "I know," she answered quietly, but her thoughts were already somewhere else. Later, While Elizabeth was preparing dinner chicken and vegetables, Nathan came down to the kitchen. He was a carbon copy of David, tall, with the same dark eyes, but thinner. He had just finished his first year of college and was home for the summer, working part-time at a local cafe. "Mom, have you seen my sneakers? The black ones," he asked, rummaging through the shoe basket by the door. "In the garage, probably. You left them there after your run," Elizabeth replied, stirring the sauce. Nathan nodded and stopped, looking at her. "Are you okay? You look tired." Elizabeth tensed. Even Nathan noticed. "I'm fine, Nat. Just work." "Maybe you should take a vacation," he suggested, opening the refrigerator. "Dad said you haven't been anywhere for a long time." "Daddy talks too much," she snapped, more sharply than she intended. Nathan raised his eyebrows, but said nothing, grabbing the apple and walking away. At dinner, the family gathered around the table as usual. Liam, the youngest son, was engrossed in his phone until Elizabeth told him to put it away. Sophia chatted about dancing, and David talked about a new project at work, building a bridge. Elizabeth listened with half an ear, nodding at the appropriate points. She felt like an outsider in this scene of family coziness. "Liz, aren't you listening?" David nudged her, smiling. "I was asking if you wanted to go to the farmer's market on Saturday. They'll have those pies you like." "Oh yeah, that sounds good," she said, forcing a smile. "But I promised Kate we'd meet. Maybe another time." David nodded, but his smile was strained. "Sure, just let me know when you're free." After dinner, Elizabeth washed the dishes and David helped dry them. He turned on the radio and an old song they had danced to at prom came on. He took her hand, pulling her gently toward him. "Come on, Liz, let's dance," he said, winking. "Just like old times." She pulled away, drying her hands on a towel. "David, I'm busy. I don't feel like dancing." He froze, looking at her. "Okay, just thought it might cheer you up." "I don't need cheering up," she replied, feeling a lump in her throat. "I just want to finish my business and go to bed." David nodded, putting the plate away in the cupboard. "Okay, good night, Liz." He went upstairs, and Elizabeth stood at the sink, looking at her reflection in the window. She knew David was trying. He always did. But something inside her was broken, and she didn't know how to fix it. The next day at work, Elizabeth was sitting at her desk reviewing balance sheets when her coworker, Sarah, popped her head into the office. "Liz, are you going to lunch?" "The guys and I are at the cafe across the street," Sarah said, adjusting her glasses. "Not today," Elizabeth replied, without looking up from the screen. "It needs to be finished." "You work too much," Sarah said. "Maybe you should join a gym." "I do yoga. It helps relieve stress." Elizabeth thought about it. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe it was just her. "Do you think it's worth it?" "Exactly. I'll give you my trainer's contacts." "He's cool." Sarah smiled and left. That evening, Elizabeth signed up for a trial class at the gym. She didn't tell David, thinking it would be a personal project. She needed to change something to feel alive again. But instead of bringing her closer to her family, this step became the first link in a chain of events that would destroy everything she loved. She lay down to sleep, staring at the ceiling. David slept next to her, his breathing even. He turned in his sleep, his hand on her waist, as he always did. But Elizabeth felt no warmth. She felt only an emptiness that grew with each passing day. The next day, Sophia ran home with the news. "Mom, I've made it to the dance team. We'll be performing at the city competition." Elizabeth hugged her daughter, trying to show her joy. "That's great, Sophie. Daddy and I will come and see it." "Dad already promised," Sophia beamed. "He said he'd buy me new sneakers for the performance." Elizabeth nodded, feeling a twinge of envy at the ease with which David got along with children. She wanted to be like him, but something was holding her back. She blamed her job, her weight, her age, everything except the truth, which she wasn't yet ready to admit. Nathan walked into the living room where Elizabeth was checking Sophia's schedule. Mom, are you coming to my game on Saturday? We're playing Lakeview. I'll try, Nat, she replied without looking up. I have reports to submit. Dad will be here, Nathan said, and there was a hint of resentment in his voice. Okay, I'll went. Elizabeth watched him go, her heart sinking. She wanted to be better for the children, for David, for herself. But instead, she was closing in more and more. Elizabeth stood in front of the mirror at the gym, looking at her reflection. 3 months of fitness training had changed her body. Her waist was slimmer, her arms were toned, and her face seemed younger. She had lost almost 15 pounds, and for the first time in years, she felt attractive. The sports bra and leggings she had bought last week fit perfectly. But inside, despite the changes on the outside, she still felt empty. Her job as an accountant was exhausting. Her children were demanding attention, and David, her husband, was still so caring, which for some reason only irritated her. At home, their cozy Oak Park home smelled like the apple pie she had baked for the kids. David walked into the kitchen carrying a bag of groceries. His shirt was unbuttoned to the top button, his hair slightly disheveled from a day at work. He smiled when he saw Elizabeth in her workout clothes. Liz, you look amazing, he said, setting his bag on the table. The gym is definitely doing you good. Elizabeth shrugged, drying her hands on a towel. Thanks, just trying to stay in shape. He came closer, putting his hand on her waist. Maybe I should sign up too. We'll run together in the mornings. She pulled away, opening the refrigerator to put away the milk. I don't know, David. I don't have much time as it is. Let's keep it simple. David nodded, but his smile faded a little. Okay, just thought it might be fun. You know I can't keep up with you. Elizabeth forced a smile, but inside she felt a pang of guilt. David had always tried to be there for her, to support her, but she couldn't reciprocate. I'll think about it, she said, even though she knew she didn't want to. That evening, the family gathered around the table for dinner spaghetti with meat sauce. Nathan, the eldest son, was talking about his football match. Liam was silent, staring at his plate, and Sophia was chatting about her new dance number. Mom, will you come to my performance on Saturday? Sophia asked, twirling a lock of hair around her finger. I'll be the soloist in the first part. Elizabeth nodded, cutting off a piece of bread. Of course, Sophie, I promised. Dad's coming too, Sophia added, looking at David. He said he'd videotape it all. David winked at his daughter. Exactly. I need to capture my star. Elizabeth felt a little irritated. David had always been the children's favorite, and it seemed so natural. She, on the other hand, was constantly struggling with the feeling that she wasn't doing enough. I'll be there too, she said, a little sharper than she intended. Nathan looked at her, raising an eyebrow. Mom, are you okay? You seem kind of tense. I'm fine, Nat, she said, trying to sound calm. Just tired. Work, you know. Maybe you should take a vacation, David suggested, pouring himself some water. We could go somewhere, to Lake Michigan, for example. Elizabeth shook her head. I have deadlines, David. I can't just get up and leave. He nodded, but there was a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Okay, just let me know if you change your mind. After dinner, Elizabeth cleared away the dishes, and David helped. He turned on the radio, and a Bruno Mars song they had loved in college came on. He took her hand, tugging it gently. Liz, let's dance, he said, smiling. Just for a minute. She pulled her hand away, turning to the sink. David, I'm busy. I don't have time for this. He froze, looking at her. Okay, just thought you'd like it. I don't need to have fun, she replied, feeling a lump in her throat. I just want to finish and go to bed. David nodded and went into the living room, leaving her alone. Elizabeth looked at her hands, covered in soap suds, and felt guilt mingle with irritation. Why couldn't she be like him? Why did his concern only make her angry? The next day at the gym, Elizabeth met her trainer, Kelly, an energetic woman in her 30s. After class, they chatted by the water cooler. "You're doing great, Liz," Kelly said, wiping sweat from her neck. "Already down 15 pounds, huh? You'll be a model soon." Elizabeth smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "Thank you. I never thought I'd get this far." "What does your husband say?" Kelly asked, opening a bottle of water. "He's probably thrilled." "David," Elizabeth shrugged. "He's supportive. Always tells me I look good." "You're lucky," Kelly chuckled. "My ex was nothing but critical until I left. Stick to your own." Elizabeth nodded, but Kelly's words stung. She knew David was a good husband, but somehow the praise didn't move him. She felt guilty, but she couldn't explain what was wrong. At home on Friday night, David suggested they watch a movie. The kids were off doing their own thing. Nathan was visiting friends, Liam was playing video games, and Sophia was at a friend's house. Elizabeth was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone while David was choosing a comedy on Netflix. "Liz, let's make it a regular evening," he said, sitting down next to her. "Popcorn, a movie, just us." She sighed, not looking up from the screen. "I'm not in the mood, David. Maybe I'll just go to bed early." He looked at her, his face growing serious. "Liz, what's wrong? You've been kind of distant for a month now. Did I do something?" Elizabeth put the phone down, feeling her irritation growing. "You didn't do anything. I'm just tired. Work, the gym, the kids. Not everyone can be like you, always positive." David nodded, but his voice was quieter. "I just want you to be happy. If I can help, let me know." "I don't need help," she snapped, standing up. "I can handle this myself." She went upstairs, leaving him alone. In the bedroom, Elizabeth lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She knew she had hurt him, but she couldn't bring herself to apologize. Something inside her had changed, and she didn't know how to stop it. The following week, at the gym, Elizabeth noticed that she was getting attention. One of the guys working out next to her smiled at her as she was doing leg presses. She was pleased, although she didn't respond. At the office, a coworker, Sarah, noticed her new look. "Liz, you look gorgeous," Sarah said over coffee. "New jeans, they fit perfectly." "Thank you," Elizabeth replied, smiling. "Just updating my wardrobe." "What's David saying?" Sarah asked, stirring her latte. "He's probably staring." Elizabeth nodded, but said nothing. She didn't want to say that things had gotten worse at home. David kept trying to get closer, but she kept pushing him away. Yesterday, he'd brought her flowers, just like that, for no reason, and she just muttered, "Thank you," and put them in a vase. She returned home late that evening, having stayed late at the gym. David was in the kitchen, heating up Liam's dinner. "Liz, where have you been?" he asked, not looking up from the stove. "Sophia called, asked me to pick her up from Emma's." Elizabeth threw her bag on a chair. "I was at the gym. I forgot about the time. Did you take it?" "Yes, she's already home," he answered, looking at her. "Liz, you could have called. I was worried." "I'm sorry," she said, but there was no warmth in her voice. "I was busy." David nodded, going back to cooking. "Okay, just let me know next time." Elizabeth went upstairs, feeling a mixture of guilt and exhaustion. She wanted to be closer to David, but every time he tried, she felt only pressure. The gym had become her refuge, a place where she could be herself, not a wife or a mother. By the end of the fall, Elizabeth had lost another 5 pounds, reaching her 20-pound goal. She bought a new dress that flattered her figure, and, for the first time in years, she felt confident. But at home, nothing had changed. David continued to be loving, but his attempts to get closer dinners, walks, even just conversations were met with coldness. Again and again, she blamed fatigue, hormones, anything but the truth. She was drifting away from him, and the gap was growing wider. Elizabeth sat at her desk in the office of an accounting firm in downtown Chicago, reviewing tax returns. Outside, a light snow was falling, coating the asphalt in a thin layer of white. Her office was small but cozy. On the desk was a photo of her family, she, David, Nathan, Liam, and Sophia on a picnic last summer. Elizabeth looked out the window, feeling tired after another long day. She had lost 20 pounds, updated her wardrobe, and her coworkers kept complimenting her on her new look. But at home, nothing had changed. David still tried to get close to her, and she pushed him away, not understanding why his concern only irritated her. The office door opened slightly, and Michael, a new financial analyst hired a couple of weeks ago, appeared in the doorway. He was slightly younger than Elizabeth, about 35, with a neat haircut, light eyes, and a charming smile. His suit fit perfectly, and his confident movements attracted attention. "Elizabeth, are you busy?" he asked, holding a folder in his hands. "I need your help with the quarterly expense report." She put her pen down, straightening up slightly. "Of course, Michael. What is it?" He walked in, closing the door, and sat down opposite, holding out a folder. "Here, the marketing budget data. I think I missed something. You're our expert." Elizabeth picked up the folder, running her eyes over the tables. "Yes, there's some confusion with the categories. We need to separate direct costs and advertising. Give me a few minutes. I'll show you." Michael smiled, leaning back in his chair. "Are you always so quick to figure things out? No wonder Sarah calls you the star of the department." Elizabeth felt her cheeks flush slightly. "Sarah is exaggerating. I'm just doing my job." "Don't be modest," he said, looking into her eyes a little longer than necessary. "And by the way, you look great today. New dress?" She looked down at her dark blue dress, which she had bought on sale. "Yes, thank you. Just updating my wardrobe." "It suits you," Michael added, his voice soft but with a hint of suggestion. "Your husband will probably be delighted." Elizabeth touched the wedding ring on her finger, as if reminding herself. Yes, he noticed," she said, quickly turning back to the folder. "Here, look, I've marked where to correct it." Michael nodded, but was in no hurry to take the documents. "Are you always so serious? Maybe we should have coffee sometime and discuss work in an informal setting." She looked at him, feeling her heart speed up slightly. His insistence was flattering, but she knew this was dangerous territory. "I'm married, Michael," she said, holding up her ringed hand, "and I have a lot to do." He raised his hands in a mock surrender. Got it. Just friendly coffee, but I'm not insisting." Elizabeth forced a smile as she handed the folder back. "Can you fix this by tomorrow?" "Sure, boss," he said with a wink and walked out. She leaned back in her chair, feeling strangely warm. Michael was charming, and his attention, though unobtrusive, touched something inside. She shook her head, pushing the thoughts away, and returned to her work. At home that evening, Elizabeth was preparing dinner baked fish with rice. David returned from work, taking off his coat at the door. His cheeks were red from the cold, and he held a bouquet of chrysanthemums in his hands. "Liz, these are for you," he said, holding out the flowers. "Just because, thought you'd like them." She took the bouquet, feeling the usual twinge of guilt. "Thank you, David. That's very sweet." He smiled, taking off his shoes. "How's your day? What's new at work?" "An ordinary day," she replied, putting the flowers in a vase. "Reports, deadlines, nothing interesting." She didn't mention Michael, though his smile flickered through her mind. David came over, hugging her from behind as she chopped vegetables. "Maybe we can have a kid-free evening tonight," he suggested, kissing her neck. "Nathan's at a friend's, Liam's in his room, Sophia's at Emma's. Just us." Elizabeth tensed, moving away. "David, I'm tired, and I still have to check the accounts. Maybe another time." He let go of her, his voice quieter. "Okay, it's just, I miss you, Liz." "I know," she replied, not looking at him. "It's just not the time." David nodded and walked into the living room, turning on the television. Elizabeth stared at the knife in her hand, guilt mingling with irritation. Why couldn't she be like she used to be? Why did his touch feel so foreign? The next day at the office, Michael dropped in on her again. This time he brought coffee from the coffee shop across the street. "Elizabeth, this is for you," he said, setting the glass down on the table. "A latte, no sugar. Sarah said you liked it." She looked at the coffee, then at him. "Michael, you don't have to do this." "I know," he smiled, sitting down on the edge of the table. "But I thought a good coffee would lift your spirits. You seem a bit thoughtful today." Elizabeth took the glass, feeling the warmth in her palms. "Thanks. It's just a lot of work." "Or something at home?" he asked, his tone light, but his eyes watching her closely. She shook her head, but the words came out. "It's just, sometimes it all seems too much. Work, family, everything at once." Michael nodded, as if understanding. "I know that feeling. I had the same thing a couple of years ago. Sometimes you just need to take a break, give yourself a break." "Easier said than done," she replied, sipping her coffee. It was hot, with a hint of vanilla. "Maybe we should start small," he suggested. "Lunch at the cafe across the street. Nothing serious, just a break." Elizabeth looked at him, feeling her heart beat faster again. "Michael, I told you I'm married." "And I respect that," he said, raising his hands. "But dinner is just dinner. I promise not to flirt. Well, almost." She smiled involuntarily, and it was the first sincere feeling that day. "I'll think about it." He nodded, standing up. "That's progress. See you later, Elizabeth." When he left, she looked at the family photo on the table. David was smiling, hugging her and the children. She felt a twinge of guilt, but quickly brushed it off. It was just coffee, no big deal. That evening at home, Sophia burst into the kitchen where Elizabeth was making soup. "Mom, have you seen my dancing shoes? They're gone." "Check the cupboard, Sophie," Elizabeth replied, stirring the broth. "You always throw them in there." Sophia ran away, and Nathan came into the kitchen, holding an economics textbook. "Mom, can you check my essay? The professor said I need to work on it." Elizabeth sighed, wiping her hands. "Nat, I'm busy. Maybe Dad could watch." "Dad's at work late," Nathan said, frowning. "Okay, I'll handle it myself." He left, and Elizabeth felt the weariness creeping in. She wanted to be a good mother, a wife, but everything seemed so hard. Later, after the children had gone to bed, David came home. He looked tired, but still smiled when he saw Elizabeth on the couch with a magazine. "Liz, are you awake?" he asked, sitting down next to her. "I thought you were already in bed." "I can't sleep," she replied, without looking up from the pages. "I have a lot of thoughts." He put his hand on her shoulder. "Want to talk? I'm here, you know." She shook her head, moving away. "No, I'm fine. I'm just tired." David looked at her, his face growing serious. "Liz, I feel like you're not with me somewhere. If something's wrong, tell me. We're a team." "I'm okay, David," she said, standing up. "I just need some time." She went into the bedroom, leaving him alone. She lay in the darkness, listening to him come up the stairs. His footsteps stopped at the door, but he did not come in. Elizabeth closed her eyes, thinking of Michael. His smile, his words, his attention, it was all so new, so easy. She knew it was wrong, but she couldn't stop thinking about him. The next day at the office, Michael came to her desk again, holding a clipboard. "Elizabeth, I need your magic. A client is confused about tax deductions." She picked up the tablet, their fingers accidentally touching. She quickly pulled her hand away, but he smiled as if he hadn't noticed. While they were discussing the numbers, he suddenly said, "You know, you're completely different when you smile. You should do it more often." Elizabeth felt her face heat up. "Michael, stop. I'm serious." "I'm serious too," he replied, but his eyes were sparkling. "Okay, I'll back out. But the coffee's still good if you change your mind." She shook her head, but the smile never left her face. When he left, she looked at her ring. She needed to stop. But part of her, the part that was tired of the routine, wanted to keep going. Elizabeth sat in her office, staring at her computer screen, her mind far from her tax returns. Outside, Chicago was bathed in gray winter light, but her office was warm and quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioner. On her desk sat a half-eaten sandwich from the cafe across the street where she had gone with Michael last week. It hadn't been just lunch, they had talked for over an hour, and she had told him, without meaning to, how tired she was, how work and family were weighing on her. Michael had listened, nodding, and his attentive eyes had made her feel wanted, alive. Now, a week later, she found herself waiting for his texts or for chance encounters at the coffee machine. At home, in their split-level house in Oak Park, things were different. Elizabeth was becoming irritable, picky about little things, and David, her husband, seemed increasingly distant. He was still solicitous, bringing her coffee in the morning, picking Sophia up from dances if Elizabeth was running late, but his attempts to get closer only angered her. She couldn't explain why, but every gesture he made seemed intrusive. Elizabeth came home on Friday evening, dropping her bag by the door. There was a smell of fried potatoes. David was cooking dinner. He was standing at the stove, in jeans and an old t-shirt, stirring something in a frying pan. His hair was slightly disheveled, and his face was playing with a familiar smile. "Liz, you're just in time," he said, turning around. "I'm making your favorite cutlets with potatoes. Would you like some wine?" Elizabeth took off her coat, feeling tired. "No, thank you. I just want to lie down." He looked at her, the smile fading slightly. "Long day? Tell me what's new." "Nothing new," she replied, opening the refrigerator to get water. "Just work." David turned off the stove and walked over to her, putting his hand on her shoulder. "Liz, are you okay? You've been kind of. I haven't been away for the last 2 weeks." She pulled away, setting the bottle on the table. "I'm fine, David. Just tired. No need to make a big deal out of it." "I'm not making a drama," he said, his voice quieter. "I just want you to talk to me. That's how we've always done it." Elizabeth felt her irritation flare. "Not always, David. Sometimes I just need space. Can you understand that?" He nodded, but his eyes darkened. "Okay, I understand. Dinner will be ready soon." She walked into the living room, feeling a twinge of guilt, but quickly brushed it aside. Why couldn't he just leave her alone? She turned on the TV, but her thoughts were on Michael. He'd texted her yesterday, "Elizabeth, you were the star of the meeting today. I don't know how you're handling those numbers." She'd responded with a quick "thank you," but the smile hadn't left her face all evening. The family gathered around the table for dinner. Nathan, the eldest, had just returned from training, his gym bag lying by the door. Liam, the youngest, was picking at his food, and Sophia was chatting about her friend Emma. "Mom, Emma wants to have a party next week," Sophia said, twirling pasta around her fork. "Can I come?" Elizabeth frowned as she cut into a piece of patty. "Sophia, you have a dance on Friday. And who's going to be at that party? I don't want you hanging around the middle of nowhere." "Mom, it's just at Emma's house." Sophia rolled her eyes. "Her mom will be here. Dad, tell her." David grinned at his daughter. "If Emma's mom is home, I don't mind. But you have to be home by 10, Sophie." "Thanks, Dad," Sophia beamed, and Elizabeth felt the usual pang of irritation. David had always been gentler, and the children knew it. "You agree too easily," Elizabeth said, looking at him. "She should finish her homework first." "She will, won't she, Sophie?" David winked at his daughter, but his gaze slid to Elizabeth. "Liz, it's okay. Don't be so strict." "I'm not being strict," she snapped, putting down her fork. "Someone just has to keep order." Nathan looked at his parents, his brows furrowing slightly. "Mom, why are you so angry? Dad just wants Sophie to have fun." Elizabeth tensed, feeling all eyes on her. "I'm not mean, Nathan. I've just had a hard day, and I don't want everyone to do what they want." "Okay," Nathan shrugged, returning to his food. Just asking. The rest of the dinner passed in silence. Elizabeth picked at her food, feeling the tension in the room weighing on her. David tried to lighten the mood by talking about his work, a new bridge project across the river, but she barely listened. After dinner, she went off to wash the dishes, and David helped Sophia with algebra in the living room. Later, when the children had gone to their rooms, David walked into the kitchen where Elizabeth was wiping down the table. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Liz, can I talk?" he asked, his voice calm but serious. She sighed, throwing the rag into the sink. "David, I'm tired." "What now?" "I don't want to fight," he said, coming closer. "But you act like I'm in your way. If I'm doing something wrong, tell me. I want to understand." Elizabeth looked at him, irritation mixing with guilt. "You're not doing anything, David. It's just, I don't know. I need time to sort myself out." "Find out what?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "Liz, we've been married 18 years. If something's wrong, we can fix it. Together." She turned away, looking at the sink. "I don't know what's wrong. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just tired of everything." David was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. "Okay, I'll give you space, but I'm here if you want to talk." He went upstairs, and Elizabeth stood there, feeling her heart clench. She knew she was hurting him, but she couldn't stop. His care, his love, all of it seemed like a heavy burden. The next day at the office, Michael caught her at the coffee machine. He was wearing a dark gray suit, his smile as disarming as ever. "Elizabeth, you don't seem to be in the mood today," he said, pouring himself some coffee. "Are you okay?" She shrugged, stirring her latte. "Just life. Work, home, everything." "I know that feeling," he said, leaning against the counter. "I went through that a couple of years ago. You feel like you're drowning, and no one notices." Elizabeth looked at him, feeling his words resonate. "Something like that, yes. Sometimes it feels like I'm running, but I'm not getting anywhere." Michael nodded, his voice softening. "Maybe you need someone you can just talk to. No pressure. I'm a good listener, if that's what it takes." She smiled despite herself. "You're not giving up, are you?" "Only when I see someone needs a break," he said with a wink. "Seriously, Elizabeth, if you want to chat, I'm here." "Thank you," she replied, feeling warmth in her chest. "I'll think about it." They went back to work, but all day she found herself thinking about him. His ease, his attention, it was so different from the tension at home. That evening, when she checked her email, a text from Michael arrived. "If you change your mind about coffee, let me know. No pressure." She didn't reply, but she left the message unread, feeling something shift inside her. At home, Nathan found her in the living room, leafing through a magazine. He sat on the sofa, holding a bottle of water. "Mom, are you and Dad okay?" he asked, looking at her. "You've been acting weird lately." Elizabeth tensed, closing the magazine. "We're fine, Nat. Just adult stuff. Don't worry." "It's just, you're angry all the time," he said, frowning. "And Dad tries, I can see that." "I'm not angry," she said, but her voice shook. "I'm just tired. Everything will be fine." Nathan nodded, but his eyes were full of doubt. "Okay, just, I don't know, talk to him or something." He left, and Elizabeth sat there, feeling her son's words cut her. She knew Nathan was right, but she couldn't bring herself to take a step toward David. Instead, she opened her phone and reread Michael's message. Her finger hovered over the keyboard, but she didn't respond. Yet, Elizabeth sat in the cafe across from her office, fiddling nervously with the corner of her napkin. Outside, Chicago was covered in snow, but inside, it smelled of freshly brewed coffee and cinnamon. Across from her, Michael looked relaxed, his coat hanging over the back of his chair, his blue eyes sparkling as he spoke. This was their third lunch together in a month, and Elizabeth could no longer pretend that this was just a friendly get-together. Their conversations were becoming increasingly personal. She told him about her doubts, about feeling like her life was passing her by, and he shared stories about his divorce and his dreams of starting his own firm. His attention was a breath of fresh air, and she didn't want it to end. "Elizabeth, you seem thoughtful today," Michael said, sipping his espresso. "What's on your mind?" She looked at him, feeling her heartbeat a little faster. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like I'm not living my life. Work, home, kids, everything is on schedule." He nodded, his voice soft. "I know that feeling. I felt that way after my divorce. But sometimes you just have to let yourself try something new, just for a little bit." Elizabeth looked away, looking at her wedding ring. She knew what he meant, and it scared her. But his words, his look, they all drew her like a magnet. "Michael, I'm married. I have a family. I can't just afford it." "I'm not asking you to leave your family," he said, leaning closer. "But you deserve to be happy, Elizabeth, sometimes." She was silent, feeling his words creeping under her skin. As they left the cafe, he touched her arm lightly, helping her put on her coat. It was an innocent gesture, but her cheeks flushed. She muttered a thank you and walked quickly to her car, but his touch stayed in her mind all evening. At home, Elizabeth was preparing dinner lasagna, Sophia's favorite. David returned from work, taking off his shoes at the door. His face was tired, but he smiled when he saw her. "Liz, this smells great," he said, walking into the kitchen. "How's your day?" "Fine," she replied without turning around. "Work, as always." He came up to her, hugging her from behind. "Maybe we could watch something after dinner. The kids are busy. We could have an evening together." Elizabeth tensed, pulling away. "David, I'm tired, and I have bills to check. Let's not do it today." He let her go, his voice quieter. "Okay, just thought we could use some time together." "We have enough time as it is," she said, more sharply than she intended. "You're home every night." David looked at her, his brows furrowing slightly. "Liz, I'm trying, but you keep pushing me away. What's going on?" She turned, feeling her irritation flare. "Nothing's happening, David. Just let me breathe, okay? It's not all about you." He nodded, but his eyes darkened. "Okay, I won't push." He went into the living room, and Elizabeth remained at the stove, clutching her spoon. She knew she had gone too far, but she couldn't stop. His care, his love, it all seemed suffocating. The next day at the office, Michael caught her in the hallway, holding a folder of documents. "Elizabeth, I need your signature on this, and maybe coffee after." She hesitated, but his smile was too infectious. "Okay, but make it quick." They were sitting in a cafe, and the conversation turned personal again. Elizabeth told him about her fight with David, about how he wanted more intimacy, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. Michael listened without interrupting, and then said, "It sounds like you feel trapped. Maybe you need something that's just yours." She looked at him, feeling the boundaries crumbling. "Maybe, but I don't know what it is." He reached out, lightly brushing her fingers. "Maybe we can start small, just allow ourselves to be happy, even for a minute." Elizabeth didn't pull her hand away. His touch was warm, and she felt something inside her break. That night, after work, she had agreed to go with him to a bar downtown. They drank wine and laughed, and when he leaned in and kissed her, she didn't stop him. Her mind screamed that this was wrong, but her body responded differently. It was the first step, and she couldn't turn back. The affair began in March and lasted 5 months. Elizabeth justified it as a temporary escape from her routine. She met Michael after work, on lunch breaks, sometimes even lying to David that she was late at a meeting. With Michael, she felt different, desirable, free, not a wife or a mother, just a woman. They talked for hours, and she shared with him what she couldn't say to David, her fears, her sense that she was losing herself. At home, she grew increasingly cold. She picked on David for little things, the way he left his mug on the table, how long he watched the news, how loudly he laughed. His attempts to get closer, flowers, dinners, even just hugs, were met with indifference or irritation. One day in April, while Sophia was at a dance and Nathan and Liam were visiting friends, David cooked dinner steak and salad and lit candles. Elizabeth returned home later than she had promised, after meeting Michael at a cafe. "Liz, I thought you'd be here by 7, David said, meeting her at the door. "Dinner's ready. Shall we sit down?" She dropped her bag on a chair, avoiding his gaze. "Sorry, I was late at work. I'm not hungry." He looked at her, his face growing serious. "Liz, this is the 3rd time this week. If something is wrong, tell me. I'm not blind." "It's all right," she snapped, taking off her coat. "There's just a lot of work. You know how it is." "I know," he said, his voice even but tense. "But you won't even look at me. What have I done?" Elizabeth felt her anger flare. "You didn't do anything, David. Just stop bothering me, okay? I need space." He nodded, but his jaw clenched. "Space. Got it. Dinner's on the table if you change your mind." He went into the kitchen, and Elizabeth went up to the bedroom, her heart pounding. She hated herself for saying that, but she couldn't stop. Michael was like a drug with him. She forgot about her problems, about the guilt, about the fact that she was destroying her family. Nathan noticed the change. One day in May, he found Elizabeth in the living room checking her phone, smiling at a text from Michael. "Mom, what's wrong with you?" he asked, sitting down next to her. "You're always nervous, and you don't talk to Dad at all." Elizabeth quickly put the phone away, her voice sharp. "Nathan, I'm fine. Just adult stuff. Don't interfere." "I'm not butting in," he said, frowning. "But Dad looks like he got run over by a truck. Can you even see how hard he's trying?" "He always tries," she replied, standing up. "Maybe I don't always need it." Nathan looked at her, his eyes full of concern. "Mom, you and Dad, you're not getting a divorce, are you?" Elizabeth froze, feeling her son's words cut her. "No, Nat, we're not getting a divorce. Just give us time." He nodded, but his eyes said he didn't believe it. When he left, Elizabeth opened a text from Michael. "Miss your smile. Tomorrow at 6, same bar," she answered. Yes, even though she knew it was a mistake. By July, the affair had become her second life. She lied to David, to the kids, even to herself, telling him it was temporary, that she would stop. But every time Michael touched her, asked her out, or even listened, she fell deeper. At home, she was a shadow of her former self, cold, nagging, distant. David kept trying, but his patience was wearing thin, and she could see it in his eyes. Nathan, Liam, and Sophia were strained, but Elizabeth was too wrapped up in her secret to notice that her family was beginning to crumble. Elizabeth stood by the kitchen window, watching the rain trickle down the glass. She clutched a mug of cold coffee, and Michael's last text message kept playing in her head. "Today at 7, same bar. I need you, Elizabeth." 5 months of dating him had made her different, alive, desirable, but every time she came home, she felt guilt eating away at her from the inside. The house in Oak Park, which smelled of freshly cut grass, was quiet. Nathan was visiting a friend, Liam was playing in his room, and Sophia was at a dance. David, her husband, was due home from work soon, and Elizabeth knew that his next attempt at intimacy would end with her coldness. The door slammed and David walked in, shaking the rain off his jacket. His face was tired, but he smiled when he saw her. "Liz, you're home," he said, hanging up his jacket. "I thought you'd be late. Want to order Chinese? The kids won't be back for a while." Elizabeth shook her head, setting her mug down on the table. "Not hungry, David. Maybe later." He looked at her, his smile fading. "Again, Liz, you hardly eat with me. What's wrong?" "Nothing," she replied, avoiding his gaze. "I'm just tired. Work, you know." David stepped closer, his voice quieter. "Liz, I'm not blind. You've been pushing me away for months. If I did something, tell me. I want to understand." Elizabeth felt irritation mingle with guilt. "You didn't do anything, David. I just need time. Please don't push." He nodded, but his eyes darkened. Time. You've been saying that for 6 months. I love you, Liz, but I don't know how long I can be a stranger in my own home. His words struck her like lightning. She turned away, fighting back tears. I need to rest, she muttered, and went into the bedroom. Lying on her bed, Elizabeth couldn't get his voice out of her head, tired, full of pain. She picked up her phone to text Michael, but instead dialed her sister Kate. She needed someone who wouldn't judge her, but would tell her the truth. Liz, what's up so early? Kate answered after the third ring. Is everything okay? Not really, Elizabeth said, her voice shaking. Kate, I don't know what I'm doing. Hey, quiet, Kate softened. Tell me, what happened? Elizabeth hesitated, but the words came out. It's David. We hardly talk. I'm angry all the time, and he doesn't deserve it. Kate was silent for a moment, then sighed. Liz, I saw him last week. He stopped by to see me and Paul. He seemed broken. Said you didn't seem to notice him. Said he was thinking about divorce. Elizabeth froze, her fingers tightening around the phone. Divorce? He really said that? Not directly, Kate replied, but he said he didn't know how much longer he could take. Liz, what's wrong? You were always so perfect. Elizabeth closed her eyes, feeling tears streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't tell Kate about Michael, about how his smile, his words, filled the emptiness inside her. I'm just confused, Kate. I don't know how to fix it. Then start with a conversation, Kate said firmly. David is a good husband. If you don't want to lose him, do something. Don't wait for him to leave. I know, Elizabeth whispered. Thank you, Kate. Call me if you need me, Kate added. I'm here, sis. Elizabeth hung up and looked at her phone. The text from Michael was still open. She had written, not working out today. We need to stop. After sending the text, she turned off the phone, as if afraid she might change her mind. The word divorce echoed in her head, and she realized she was at risk of losing everything: David, the children, the family they had spent 18 years building. The next day at the office, she avoided Michael, but he found her at lunchtime by the coffee machine. His shirt was slightly unbuttoned, and his eyes were more serious than usual. Elizabeth, what's the message? He asked, holding up the cup. Are you okay? She led him into her office, closing the door. Michael, this is the end. I can't do this anymore. I have a family, children. This was a mistake. He looked at her, his face tense. A mistake? Elizabeth, you were happy with me. I saw it. I was, she admitted, her voice breaking. But I'm destroying everything I have. I need to stop. Michael nodded, but his eyes narrowed. Okay, your decision, but you know where to find me if you change your mind. I won't change my mind, she said, though part of her was hesitant. He left, and Elizabeth stood there, feeling empty. She knew she had done the right thing, but his absence already felt like a loss. To avoid losing her temper, she decided to quit. Working at this firm was steeped in Michael, his office, his voice in the hallway. That same day, she handed in her resignation, telling her boss she was leaving because of personal circumstances. He tried to persuade her to stay and offered her a promotion, but she refused. Elizabeth, you're one of our best employees, he said, looking over his glasses. Are you sure you won't change your mind? I'm sure, she replied. I need to be with my family. He nodded, signing the papers. Good luck. If anything happens, the doors are open. Elizabeth left his office feeling relieved, but also anxious. She hoped that without Michael by her side, it would be easier to return to David, to the life she had almost destroyed. At home, she tried to be a better person. That evening, she cooked dinner, baked fish and potatoes, and even put candles on the table, something she hadn't done in years. David came home from work, his eyebrows raised in surprise. Liz, what's the occasion? He asked, hanging up his jacket. It looks like a restaurant. I just felt like it, she replied, trying to smile. Sit down, let's eat. He nodded, but his gaze was wary. At dinner, Sophia was talking about a new dance number, Liam was complaining about a school project, and Nathan was silent, glancing at his parents. Elizabeth tried to be involved, asking questions, laughing, but she felt like an actress in someone else's play. After dinner, when the kids had left, David was helping wash the dishes. He turned on the radio and an old Frank Sinatra song started playing. He extended his hand, smiling. "Liz, let's dance," he said. "At least a few steps." Elizabeth took his hand, letting him lead the way. His palm was warm, familiar, but her mind was wandering. She pictured Michael, laughing at the bar, and then pushed the image away. She should have been here with David. "You're different today," he said, looking into her eyes. "Has something changed?" "I just want things to be good between us," she replied quietly. "I'm sorry if I wasn't myself." He nodded, pulling her closer. "I want this too, Liz. We can do this." She smiled, but inside she felt a weight. She wanted to believe she could fix this, but the phone in her pocket was buzzing a new text from Michael. She didn't look, but she knew it was there. Later, after David had gone to bed, she opened it. "I respect your decision, but I need you. If you want to talk, I'm here." She didn't answer, but she didn't delete the message. That thread to him, thin and dangerous, was still holding her. The next morning, Nathan found her in the kitchen, preparing breakfast pancakes, which the children loved. He poured himself some juice, looking at her. "Mom, are you okay with Dad?" he asked, his voice wary. "I don't think you had a fight yesterday." "We're fine, Nat," she replied, trying to sound confident. "I'm just trying to be better." He nodded, but his gaze was hard. "Dad looks like he's afraid you'll leave. Don't do that, okay?" Elizabeth swallowed, feeling her son's words cut her. "I'm not going anywhere, Nat. I promise." But when he left, she looked at her reflection in the window. She quit her job, cut off all contact with Michael, but his words still echoed in her head. She wanted to save her family, but she feared that a part of it was already lost. Elizabeth nervously tugged at the hem of the curtain in the living room of her Oak Park home, looking out over the driveway. Summer sun poured into the room, reflecting off the wood floors, and cicadas buzzed outside. She had quit her job at the firm 2 weeks ago to cut ties with Michael, but yesterday he had called to say he had found her forgotten folder and a few personal items, a photograph of the children, a notebook, a pair of earrings. She had let him stop by, telling herself it would be a quick meeting, just to pick up a box and say goodbye. But now her heart was pounding, and his voice was playing in her head, soft and insistent. The doorbell rang, startling her. Elizabeth adjusted her dress, took a deep breath, and opened the door. Michael stood there, wearing jeans and a white shirt, holding a small cardboard box. His smile was as disarming as ever, but there was a hint of worry in his eyes. "Elizabeth, hi," he said, holding out the box. "Here's your stuff. I didn't mean to bother you, but I thought you might need it." She took the box, trying not to meet his eyes. "Thanks, Michael. You could have picked it up yourself." He shrugged, not moving from his spot. "I know, but honestly, I wanted to see you. The office is empty without you." Elizabeth set the box on the table by the door, crossing her arms. "Michael, don't. I left to end this. I have a family." He stepped closer, his voice quieter. "I understand, but I miss you, Elizabeth. We had a good time. Maybe we should talk one last time to say goodbye properly." Her fingers curled around the edge of his sleeve. She wanted to say no, to slam the door, but his look, his words, brought back memories of laughter in the bar, of long conversations, of the way he made her feel alive. "This is a bad idea," she said, but her voice was weak. "Just a conversation," he insisted, lightly touching her hand. "Nothing more, for those months." Elizabeth looked at his hand, feeling the warmth of his fingers. She knew she should refuse, but the weakness she had tried so hard to suppress won out. "Okay," she whispered, "but just talk. And not for long." They walked into the living room, and Elizabeth closed the front door, knowing the children wouldn't be back anytime soon. Nathan was working part-time at a cafe, Liam was visiting a friend, and Sophia was at a dance. David, she figured, would be working on a construction site until the evening. Michael sat on the sofa, and she settled into the chair opposite, holding the box in her lap like a shield. "How are you?" he asked, looking into her eyes. "Really? Without a job, without all this?" Elizabeth shrugged, fiddling with the corner of the box. "I'm trying to figure it out. It's difficult at home. David tries, but I don't know how to be who he wants me to be." "He doesn't see how special you are," Michael said, leaning closer. "I did. Every day we talked, laughed. You deserve to be happy, Elizabeth." She shook her head, but his words hurt something inside her. "Michael, I can't. I'm trying to save my family. This was all a mistake." "A mistake?" He raised his eyebrows, his voice softening. "We were happy. Maybe that's the truth, and not what you force yourself to do at home." Elizabeth swallowed, feeling the boundaries crumbling. He stood and came to her side, his hand on her shoulder. "One last moment," he whispered, "to say goodbye." She looked up, and his closeness, his scent, were all too familiar. When he leaned in and kissed her, she didn't pull away. The kiss was slow, longing, and she gave in, letting herself forget about the wine, about David, about the children. They moved into the guest bedroom, and Elizabeth lost track of time, lost in a moment she had promised herself she wouldn't allow. Meanwhile, David drove home, humming along to the radio. In his pocket were tickets to a concert by a band he and Elizabeth had loved in college. He had left work early, having arranged with his boss to surprise them. In the trunk were the provisions for dinner: steaks, potatoes, a bottle of red wine. He wanted to put the spark back into their marriage, to show Liz that they could be like they used to be. At the stoplight, he smiled, imagining her reaction. Maybe tonight she would be the Elizabeth he loved. Elizabeth didn't hear the front door slam. She was in the bedroom with Michael when David's voice rang through the house. "Liz, are you home?" Her heart sank. She pulled away from Michael, whose eyes widened. "Oh my God, it's David," she whispered, jumping up. "Michael, go away now." She was pulling on her dress, but David's footsteps were already approaching. The bedroom door swung open, and he stood there, his face pale, his eyes wide with shock. He was holding a grocery bag in his hands, which slowly fell to the floor. The tickets fell out of his pocket, and Elizabeth felt her throat tighten. "Liz." His voice was hoarse, full of pain. "What is this?" "David, I." She took a step toward him, but he raised his hand, stopping her. Michael stood up, straightening his shirt. "Look, man, it's not what you think," he began, but David turned to him, his face twisted in anger. "Not that," David growled, clenching his fists. "You're in my house, with my wife." Elizabeth rushed between them, her voice shaking. "David, please let me explain." But David wasn't listening. He took a step toward Michael, and Elizabeth screamed, trying to separate them. She grabbed David's arm, but he pushed her away, and she fell onto the bed. Michael tried to say something, but David was beside himself. Elizabeth closed her eyes, hearing the screams and noise, unable to intervene. When she opened her eyes, Michael was lying on the floor, clutching his face. David was standing over him, breathing heavily, his hands shaking. Elizabeth jumped up, sobbing. "David, stop, please." He looked at her, his eyes full of tears. "How could you, Liz?" he whispered. "After everything." He walked away, pulled out his phone, and dialed 911. "Yes, it's me," he said, his voice shaking. "I need the police. I got into a fight with someone in my house." Elizabeth sat on the floor, hugging her knees, looking at the crumpled tickets. She had destroyed everything she had tried to save. Give it a like if your heart breaks for David too. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next exciting stories. Elizabeth stood frozen in the corner of the guest bedroom, pressed against the wall. Her hands were shaking, tears were streaming down her cheeks, and her mind was a mess. David stood in the center of the room, breathing heavily, his shoulders slumped, his eyes empty. Elizabeth wanted to say something, but her throat tightened. "David," she whispered, but he didn't look at her. He held the phone, finishing the 911 call. "They're on their way," he said, his voice hoarse, like he was holding back a scream. "Are you happy, Liz? Was it worth it?" "I didn't mean to," she began, but he raised his hand, stopping her. "No need," he snapped. "Just no need." Michael groaned, trying to get up. "You're crazy," he croaked, holding his cheek. "I'm going to sue." David turned to face him, his fists clenched, but he didn't move. "Get out of my house," he said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. Elizabeth jumped up, her voice shaking. "Michael, go away. Please, just go away." But Michael didn't have time. A knock on the door broke the silence, and the police entered, their voices sharp. "Chicago police, everyone stay where you are." David raised his hands, slowly lowering himself to his knees. "I was the one who called," he said, looking at the floor. I'm guilty." One of the officers, a stocky man with short hair, approached him. "Sir, put your hands behind your head. State your name." "David Wilson," he replied, his voice even, but Elizabeth could see his shoulders shaking. The paramedics followed, bending over Michael. "Sir, can you hear me?" one of them asked, checking his face. "We need to get to the hospital. It looks serious." Elizabeth stood against the wall as the policeman asked questions. "Ma'am, do you live here?" he asked, holding up his notebook. "What happened?" "I, it's my fault," she whispered, but her voice was lost in the noise. She watched as David was handcuffed, his back straight but his eyes empty. Michael was carried away on a stretcher, and she couldn't move. "Ma'am, I need your story," the officer insisted. "Who is this man? Why did the fight start?" Elizabeth swallowed, her voice weak. "It's a colleague of mine, an ex. He brought things, and David came home. He saw us, and everything got out of hand." The officer nodded, writing down. "Do you confirm that your husband started the conflict?" I I don't know," she said, feeling tears welling up. "It's my fault. I shouldn't have." "Okay, ma'am, we'll figure it out," he said, closing his notebook. "You'll need to give a statement at the station." Elizabeth nodded, but her eyes were on David. He was led away to the car, and he didn't look at her. When the door closed, she collapsed on the couch, clutching her head. The tickets lay on the floor, crumpled like their lives. She had wanted to fix everything, but instead she had destroyed her family. An hour later, the house was filled with the sound of children's voices. Nathan entered first, his face pale as he saw the broken lamp and the stains on the floor. "Mom, what was here?" he asked, throwing down his backpack. "Where's Dad?" Elizabeth looked up, her face wet with tears. "Nat, I ruined everything." He stepped closer, his voice shaking. "What did you do? Where's Dad?" "They took him," she whispered. "The police. Nat, I'm sorry." His eyes widened, anger flared. "Taken? For what? Mom, tell me what happened." Elizabeth was silent, unable to speak the truth. Nathan shook his head, his face twisted. "You cheated on him? Seriously?" She lowered her head, and that was the answer. Nathan turned around, slamming the door. A few minutes later, Liam and Sophia returned. Liam froze when he saw the mess. "Mom, what's this? Where's Dad?" Sophia, with a backpack on her shoulder, turned pale. "Mom, what's going on? Why is Nathan yelling?" Elizabeth tried to stand up, but her legs gave way. "Kids, I made a mistake. Dad was taken to the police. He's okay, but..." "What mistake?" Sophia raised her voice, her eyes filling with tears. "Mom, what did you do?" Elizabeth wanted to hug her, but Sophia pulled away. "Don't touch me. Where's Dad?" "He was arrested," Elizabeth said, her voice breaking. "Because of me. I'm sorry. Liam shook his head, his face stony. Are you serious? You were with someone? Elizabeth didn't answer, and the children went upstairs, leaving her alone. David had wanted to surprise her, and she had broken his heart. She dialed Kate's number, but her sister didn't answer. Elizabeth was left in silence, hearing only the echo of sirens in her head. Later, she drove to the station to inquire about David. The officer at the desk, an elderly woman with tired eyes, shook her head. Mrs. Wilson, your husband is in jail. There's a hearing tomorrow. You'd better get a lawyer. Can I see him? Elizabeth asked, her voice shaking. Not today, the woman replied. Come back tomorrow. Elizabeth stepped outside, the warm Chicago air stifling her. She sat in her car, clutching the steering wheel, and began to cry. She had destroyed everything: her marriage, her family, her children's trust, and now she doesn't know how to live with it. Elizabeth stood at the sink in the kitchen of her Oak Park home, mechanically scrubbing a plate. Outside, the August sunset was setting, painting the sky orange, but the house was eerily quiet. It had been a week since David had been arrested and Michael had been taken to the hospital. Nathan, Liam, and Sophia barely spoke to her, locking themselves in their rooms or going to see friends. The living room still bore the marks of that night: a wine stain on the carpet, a scratch on the wall from a fallen lamp. Elizabeth tried to clean, to cook, to pretend life was going on, but every look from the children was like a knife. She put the plate in the drainer and looked at her hands. Her wedding ring glittered, as if mocking her. She had gone to the police station yesterday, but David had refused to see her. The lawyer she had hired had told her dryly that the case was serious. Michael had been badly injured, and his wife was suing. Elizabeth still couldn't believe that Michael had been married. He had never worn a ring, never mentioned family, and this truth, revealed at the hospital, had made her guilt unbearable. The door slammed and Nathan walked in, dropping his backpack by the door. His face was grim, his eyes avoiding hers. He had been working overtime at the cafe to cover the bills while Elizabeth looked for a new job. Her reputation in accounting had been tarnished, and no one was in a hurry to hire her. Nat, dinner's ready, Elizabeth said, trying to sound calm. I made chicken pasta. Do you want to eat? He shook his head, opening the fridge. Not hungry. I won't be long. I need to pick up Liam from his friends. Nathan, please, her voice wavered. Talk to me. I know you're angry, but... Angry? He turned, his eyes flashing. Mom, you destroyed our family. Dad is in jail because of you. How can you even ask to talk? Elizabeth gripped the edge of the table, tears stinging her eyes. I didn't mean to, Nat. I was trying to make things right. I'm sorry. Excuse me. He raised his voice. You cheated on Dad. Do you even understand what's wrong with him now? And with us? Sophia cries every night. Liam doesn't talk at all. And I'm pulling double shifts so we don't lose our home. She stepped toward him, holding out her hand. Nat, I know what you're doing. I'll find a job. Don't touch me. He pulled away, his face stone. I don't want your apologies. Just stay away. He grabbed the keys and left, slamming the door. Elizabeth sank into a chair, clutching her head. She wanted to scream, to beg, but she knew words would change nothing. The children saw her as a traitor, and she couldn't blame them. That evening, she called her parents, hoping for support. Her mother, Marge, answered after a long pause. Liz, what have you done? Her voice was cold. I talked to David's father. He's furious. He says you destroyed his son. Mom, I didn't mean to, Elizabeth whispered, clutching the phone. I tried to stop it. Please believe me. Believe it. Marge raised her voice. You cheated on your husband, Liz, a good man who cared about you. How could you? Elizabeth closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. I know it's my fault, but I want to make it right. Help me, Mom. Fix it. Marge snorted. Your father doesn't want to see you. I tried to stand up for you, but he said you'd brought shame on the family. And I don't know how to defend you. The call ended, and Elizabeth was left in silence. She dialed her friend Sarah, with whom she worked at the firm, but she was short. "Liz, I heard what happened," Sarah said, her voice tense. It's terrible. I'm sorry, I have to go." The line went dead, and Elizabeth realized that her friends were turning away. The next day, she went to the hospital to check on Michael. She needed to understand how bad it was. In the waiting room, she encountered a woman thin, with tired eyes and disheveled hair. The woman looked at her, and her face twisted. "Are you Elizabeth?" she asked, her voice shaking with anger. "The one who slept with my husband." Elizabeth froze, her throat dry. "You're Michael's wife?" "Claire," the woman snapped. "5 years of marriage, 2 children. And you. You destroyed my family. He never talked about you, but I found out. And now he's in the hospital, and I'm filing for divorce." "I didn't know," Elizabeth whispered, feeling the ground slipping from under her feet. "He didn't say he was married. I swear." "You didn't know?" Claire stepped closer, her eyes sparkling. "You slept with him for months. Did you even think about anyone other than yourself?" Elizabeth stepped back, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Claire shook her head, her face wet with tears. "You and your husband, you're both monsters. He beat Michael up, and you're just a viper." She left, leaving Elizabeth standing in the hallway. The nurse reported that Michael was stable but needed surgery on his face. Elizabeth left the hospital with guilt weighing on her chest. Michael had lied to her, but that didn't excuse her. She had destroyed not only her own family, but someone else's as well. At home, Sophia was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Elizabeth tried to talk. "Sophie, do you want to eat? I can heat up some pasta." Sophia didn't even look up. "I'm not hungry. Leave me alone." "Sophie, please." Elizabeth sat down next to her, her voice shaking. "I know you're angry, but I love you. I want to make things right." "Fix it." Sophia jumped up, her eyes filled with tears. "You betrayed Dad. He's in prison, and you're sitting here as if nothing happened. I hate you." She ran upstairs, slamming the door. Elizabeth sat there, feeling her daughter's words cut her. Liam, who had gone down to get water, passed by without a word. His silence was worse than shouting. Nathan returned late, carrying a bag of groceries. He threw it on the table without looking at her. "I paid for the electricity and water," he said coldly, "but we're almost out of money. Get a job, Mom." "Nat, I'm trying," she said, her voice weak. "I'm going to interviews. Thanks for helping." "I'm not doing this for you," he snapped. "I'm doing this for Liam and Sophia. They shouldn't have to suffer because of you." He left, and Elizabeth was alone. She opened her laptop, checking job postings, but each rejection letter hit her. Her name was tied to the scandal, and Chicago accounting firms didn't want to take the risk. She applied to retail, knowing she had no choice. That night, she lay in bed, looking at the empty side where David had slept. His scent still lingered on the pillow, and she clutched it, sobbing. She remembered his smile, his attempts to get close, his pain that night. She wanted to call her lawyer, but she was afraid to hear that David hated her. She wanted to hug the children, but they pushed her away. She wanted to go back, but time was relentless. The next day, she went to her parents, hoping for forgiveness. Her father, sitting in his chair, did not even look at her. "You have disgraced us, Liz," he said, his voice heavy. "Go away. I have nothing to say to you." Marge, her mother, walked her to the door, but her eyes were full of disappointment. "Liz, I don't know how you came to this," she said quietly, "but you're going to have to live with it, on your own." Elizabeth returned home feeling like a ghost. She had cooked dinner, soup that no one ate. The children took the plates to their rooms, avoiding her. Nathan had left a check on the table, the internet fee deducted from his paycheck. Elizabeth watched him, feeling like her son had taken over her role. She wanted to say that he can handle it, but the words got stuck. She went to bed clutching her phone. A new text from her lawyer read, "Hearing tomorrow. Be prepared for questions." Elizabeth closed her eyes, but sleep would not come. She had destroyed her family, and now every day was a reminder of it. Michael, his wife, David, the children, they were all paying for her selfishness, and she didn't know how to stop the pain. Elizabeth fidgeted with the strap of her bag as she sat on the wooden bench in the courtroom. The room smelled of floor wax and old paper, and the air conditioning hummed, struggling to keep up with the September heat. Her dark gray suit, bought especially for the hearing, was too tight, and she could feel the sweat trickling down her back. Across the aisle, David sat in his orange prison uniform, his hands cuffed. He wasn't looking at her, his gaze fixed on the table, but his face, drawn and pale, broke her heart. Nathan, Liam, and Sophia sat behind her, their silence heavier than any shouting. Elizabeth's family, her parents and sister, Kate, were there too, but their eyes were full of judgment. The judge, an older man with thick eyebrows, called the trial to order. David's lawyer, a skinny guy named Mark, whom Elizabeth had hired with her last savings, looked tense. The prosecutor, a woman with a short haircut, called Elizabeth to the witness stand. Her heels clicked on the floor, and each step seemed like a step toward the scaffold. "Mrs. Wilson," the prosecutor began, her voice sharp, "tell the court what happened on August 12th in your home." Elizabeth swallowed, her hands tightening on the railing. She could feel everyone's eyes, David's, the children's, the parents'. I was home. Michael, my ex-colleague, came to return my things. We talked, and—" "You did?" The prosecutor interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "Mrs. Wilson, be precise. You were in a romantic relationship with Mr. Clark, correct?" Elizabeth looked down, her cheeks burning. "Yes, it started in March. It lasted 5 months." The room murmured, and she heard a muffled sob. "Sophia." Elizabeth forced herself to continue. "I tried to stop it. I quit the firm. I wanted to say goodbye to him that day. But we ended up in the bedroom." "And your husband, David Wilson, found you?" the prosecutor asked, her tone cold. "Yes," Elizabeth whispered. "He came home early. He wanted to surprise me. Dinner, concert tickets." "And what happened next?" the prosecutor insisted. Elizabeth closed her eyes, remembering the screams, the noise. "David, he was in shock. He and Michael started arguing, and a fight broke out. I tried to stop them, but I couldn't." The prosecutor nodded, showing photographs of Michael from the hospital. "Mr. Clark was injured. Did your husband do this?" "Yes," Elizabeth replied, her voice barely audible. "But he was beside himself. He didn't mean to." "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson," the prosecutor interrupted. "That's all I have." David's lawyer stood up, his voice calmer. "Mrs. Wilson, did your husband know about your affair before that day?" "No," she said. "I hid it. He trusted me." "And when he found you with Mr. Clark, was it a shock?" Mark asked. "Yes," her voice wavered. "He didn't expect it. He loved me." Mark nodded. "Are you confirming that you tried to separate them?" "Yes," she whispered. "I screamed, grabbed him. But it all happened so fast." She returned to her seat, feeling her legs buckle. Nathan looked at her, his face stony, but his eyes shining with tears. Sophia buried her face in Liam's shoulder, who was clenching his fists. Elizabeth wanted to hug them, but she knew they would push her away. The prosecutor called the next witness, but the main piece of evidence was the recording of David's 911 call. The technician turned on the audio, and David's voice filled the courtroom. "I need the police," he said, his voice shaking. I got into a fight with a man. He was with my wife, in my house." His words were interrupted by sobs. She cheated on me. I didn't mean to. I just—" He trailed off, and the operator asked him to stay on the line. Elizabeth covered her face with her hands, tears streaming through her fingers. She heard Sophia sob, heard Nathan exhale sharply. The recording was heartbreaking, and each sob from David was like a blow. She stole a glance at him, his head down, his shoulders shaking. She had destroyed him, and the truth was unbearable. Michael's lawyer, representing his wife Claire, called her to the stand. Claire, her eyes red from crying, told how she learned of Michael's affair, how his injuries had torn their family apart. "He cheated on me," she said, looking at Elizabeth, "and her husband almost killed him. They're both to blame." Elizabeth looked down, feeling the room pressing down on her. Her parents sat silently, her father turned away, her mother pressed her lips together. Kate, her sister, looked at the floor as if she couldn't bear the sight of Elizabeth. David was the last to speak. He spoke quietly, looking at the judge. "I came home to surprise my wife," he said. "I saw them, and I lost control. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, but I couldn't stop." "Do you regret it?" Mark asked. "Yes," David said, his voice hoarse. "I failed my children, myself. I should have left, but I couldn't." The prosecutor asked her final question. "Mr. Wilson, do you admit that you injured Mr. Clark?" "Yes," he said, lowering his head. The judge called a break, and Elizabeth stepped out into the hallway, feeling the air tighten in her chest. Nathan walked past her, not looking at her. "Nat, please," she called, but he quickened his pace. Sophia and Liam followed him, their faces covered like masks. Kate came over, her voice quiet. "Liz, how could you?" she asked. "Have you seen him? He's broken. And the kids, they don't know how to deal with this." "I know," Elizabeth whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Kate, I didn't mean to. I tried." "Tried?" Kate shook her head. "You ruined everything. And now David is paying for your mistakes." She left, leaving Elizabeth alone. Her parents didn't even come up to her. Her father went outside. Her mother followed him. Elizabeth returned to the hall, feeling like a ghost. After the break, the judge delivered his sentence. "David Wilson, for grievous bodily harm, you are sentenced to 5 years imprisonment," he said, his voice level. "In view of good behavior, this may be reduced." The room gasped. Sophia began to cry, Liam squeezed her hand, and Nathan stood up and walked out without looking back. Elizabeth watched as David was led away, his back straight, but she could see his hands shaking. He didn't look at her, and that was the worst part. After the trial, Elizabeth stayed in the courtroom until it was empty. She approached the lawyer, her voice shaking. "Mark, what now? Can I see him?" "Not today," he replied, gathering up his papers. "He's in a cell waiting to be transferred to prison. And Mrs. Wilson, he's made it clear he doesn't want to see you." Elizabeth nodded, her heart sinking. "And the children? Will they be okay?" Mark shrugged. "They're angry, and that's okay. Give them time. But you need to prepare yourself. Claire Clark is filing a civil suit against you for emotional distress. It's going to be tough." She walked out of the courthouse, the warm Chicago air hitting her face. Nathan was waiting by the car with Liam and Sophia, but they weren't looking at her. "We're going to Grandma's," Nathan said coldly. "Don't wait for us." "Nat, please," Elizabeth began, but he raised his hand. "That's enough, Mom," he said, his voice firm. "You made your choice. We live with it now." They drove away, leaving her in the parking lot. Elizabeth sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel. She remembered the recording of David's call, his sobs, his pain. She remembered the children's faces, their hatred. The family she loved was broken, and she was the reason. She wanted to fix it, but she didn't know how. At home, there was an empty table, unpaid bills, and a silence that screamed louder than any words. Elizabeth adjusted price tags on the shelves of a supermarket on the outskirts of Oak Park, her hands moving mechanically. Her uniform, a blue vest with the store's logo, chafed her neck, and there were dark circles under her eyes. It had been a month since David had been sentenced to 5 years in prison, and her life had become a series of gray days. The scandal of her infidelity and her husband's arrest had closed her doors to Chicago accounting firms, and now she was working in retail, barely making enough to cover her mortgage. The house that had once been full of laughter was now as silent as a grave, and every creak of a floorboard reminded her of what she had lost. She finished packing away the soup cans and glanced at her watch. It was 5 o'clock. Her shift would end in an hour, and she could already picture herself returning to an empty house. Nathan, Liam, and Sophia were rarely around, staying with friends or David's parents. Nathan, who had taken on the role of breadwinner, worked at the cafe and went to college, sending money into the accounts. Elizabeth tried to talk to him, but every conversation ended with his cold, "Not now, Mom." She was sitting in the back room on her lunch break, munching on a sandwich, when a coworker, an older woman named Dorothy, sat down next to her. "Elizabeth, you're like a ghost today," Dorothy said, opening a thermos of coffee. "Everything okay?" Elizabeth forced a smile as she took a bite of bread. "Just tired. Kids take time, you know." "Oh, I know," Dorothy nodded. "My son is always busy, but at least he calls. And how are yours?" "They're busy," Elizabeth replied, avoiding details. "They have their own lives." Dorothy looked at her, but didn't ask any questions. Elizabeth was grateful for that. She didn't want to explain that her children barely looked at her, that their anger and pain were her fault. At home that night, she cooked dinner macaroni and cheese, hoping one of the kids would show up. She set 3 plates on the table, but like the day before, she ate alone. After dinner, she sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and pen, starting another letter to David. She wrote to him every week, pouring out her guilt, her apologies, her love. "David," she wrote, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I ruined everything we had. But I want you to know that I love you. I always have. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I'm trying to be better for the kids, for us. Please give me a chance to talk." She sealed the envelope, knowing it would be returned unopened, like all the others. She sent 6 letters in a month, each one returned marked "Recipient's Refusal." She went to the prison twice, but the guards said the same thing: "He doesn't want to see you." Elizabeth gripped the steering wheel on the way home, crying until she had no more tears. She went down to the living room, where Sophia was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and there were shadows under her eyes. Elizabeth knew Sophia was skipping dances and barely hanging out with her friends. "Sophie, would you like some tea?" Elizabeth asked, stopping at the door. "I can make your favorite, the mint one." Sophia didn't look up. "I don't want to. I'm leaving soon." "Where?" Elizabeth stepped closer, her voice soft. "Maybe you should stay. We could watch a movie, like we used to." "Like before?" Sophia jumped up, her voice shaking. "Mom, nothing will be like before. Dad is in jail because of you. Stop pretending that everything is okay." Elizabeth clasped her hands, feeling her daughter's words cut her. "Sophie, I know it's my fault, but I'm trying. I want to be with you." "I don't want you near me," Sophia screamed, her eyes filling with tears. "You ruined everything. Leave me alone." She ran out of the house, slamming the door. Elizabeth sank down on the couch, clutching her head. She knew Sophia was suffering. Her teacher had called to say the girl had become withdrawn, skipping classes. Elizabeth wanted to help, but she didn't know how. Liam was no better. He came home late, his backpack hanging over his shoulder. Elizabeth met him in the hallway. "Liam, dinner is on the table," she said. "Want me to heat it up?" He passed by without looking. "No need. I'm not hungry." "Liam, please," her voice cracked. "Talk to me. I know you're angry, but—" He stopped, his back tensing. "Angry? Mom, you betrayed Dad. You betrayed us. What are you waiting for? For me to pretend everything is okay?" Elizabeth took a step toward him, but he raised his hand. "Don't. Just don't." He went into his room, and Elizabeth heard the lock click. She knew Liam had changed, too. His basketball coach said he was becoming aggressive, fighting with classmates. She tried to get him an appointment with a school counselor, but he refused. Nathan was the only one who held the family together. He came home after his shifts, bringing groceries and paying bills. Elizabeth found a check on his desk, the electricity bill, deducted from his paycheck. She wanted to thank him, but he avoided conversation. One evening, he walked into the kitchen where she was washing dishes. "Mom, I transferred the money for the internet," he said without looking at her. "But we don't have much left. When will you start earning?" Elizabeth wiped her hands, her voice quiet. "I'm working, Nat. The store doesn't pay much, but I'm looking for something else. Thanks for helping." "I'm not doing this for you," he snapped. "For Liam and Sophia, they shouldn't be living on the streets because of your mistakes." He walked away, leaving her with the plates. Elizabeth pressed her lips together, holding back tears. Nathan was right, she had failed them. He had sacrificed his time, his sleep, his studies, to support his brother and sister, while she tried to hold on to the last of their lives. She called Kate, hoping for advice, but her sister was cold. "Liz, I don't know what to say," Kate said. "The kids are in hell, David's in jail, and you keep living like it's nothing. How can you?" "I'm not alive," Elizabeth said, her voice breaking. "Kate, I'm drowning. I write to him, I go to prison, but he doesn't want to see me. The children hate me. Please help me." "Help?" Kate sighed. "Liz, you did this to yourself. Give the kids time, and pray that David will forgive you someday." The conversation ended, and Elizabeth was left in silence. She opened her laptop, checking job postings, but every "we'll get in touch" was an empty promise. She applied to another store, knowing it wouldn't save them from debt. That night, she sat in her bedroom, looking at the photograph of the family on the nightstand, them on Lake Michigan, laughing, happy. David was holding her. The children were building a sandcastle. Elizabeth clutched the frame, sobbing. She remembered his voice at the trial, his sobs in the recorded call. She wanted to go back, but time was relentless. The next day, she went to the prison for the third time in a month. The guard, a balding man with tired eyes, shook his head. "Mrs. Wilson, he refuses. Don't waste your time." "Please give him this," she said, holding out the letter. "Tell him that I will not leave until he has read it." The guard sighed, taking the envelope. "I'll pass it on, but don't expect a miracle." Elizabeth returned home feeling empty. The children were with David's parents, and the house greeted her with silence. She cooked dinner, but the plates remained untouched. Nathan left a note, "I'll be late, pay for gas." Elizabeth looked at the receipt, feeling like her son had become an adult before his time. She lay down on her bed, clutching David's pillow. His scent had mostly faded, but she clung to it like it was her last thread. Elizabeth wiped the counter at the supermarket on the edge of Oak Park, her movements mechanical. The spring breeze blew through the automatic doors, bringing the smell of damp asphalt, but she barely noticed it. It had been 2.5 years since David had been sentenced to 5 years in prison, and her life had been reduced to routine. Working at the store, paying bills, sending letters back unopened. The house was empty. Nathan, Liam, and Sophia rarely showed up, spending the night with friends or David's parents. The silence in the house was like concrete, and every creak of a floorboard was a reminder of her guilt. The phone in her pocket vibrated, interrupting her thoughts. Elizabeth wiped her hands on her apron and answered when she saw the unfamiliar number. Kate, her sister, had a tense voice, and Elizabeth immediately sensed something was wrong. "Liz, it's me," Kate said. "Where are you? We need to talk." Elizabeth walked to the checkout, her heart sinking. "At work? What happened? The kids?" "The kids are fine," Kate said, but her voice shook. "It's David. He was attacked in prison. He's in the infirmary, Liz. This is serious." Elizabeth froze, her fingers tightening around the phone. "Attacked? Is he okay?" "He's alive," Kate said. "He's injured, but the doctors say he's stable. I heard from David's dad. He's furious, blaming you." Elizabeth pressed her lips together, feeling tears sting her eyes. "How did this happen? Who?" "I don't know the details," Kate replied. "Some kind of conflict with a prisoner. Liz, go there. Maybe he'll agree to see you." "He doesn't want to see me," Elizabeth whispered. I went. He refuses." "Try again," Kate insisted. "This is no joke, Liz. Think of the children." Elizabeth nodded, though Kate couldn't see. "I'll go. Thank you for telling me." She hung up and leaned against the counter, feeling the depression she had been battling for years come crashing down on her. She pictured David in the hospital bed, his face full of pain. Her betrayal had landed him in jail, and now he was suffering because of her. The thought was unbearable, and she clutched her head until the manager called her back, urging her to get back to work. That evening, Elizabeth called Nathan, knowing he needed to hear it from her. Nathan, now a 22-year-old college student, was working shifts at the cafe while studying and paying the bills by supporting Liam and Sophia. His voice was as cold as ever. "What, Mom?" he asked, the coffee machine humming in the background. "Nat, it's about Dad," she said, trying not to lose her temper. "He was attacked in prison. He's in the infirmary. I'm going there." The silence on the other end was heavy. "Attacked?" Nathan's voice wavered. "Is he okay?" "He's alive," she said, her throat tight. "He's injured, but the doctors say he's stable. Nat, I wanted you to know." "Damn," he breathed. "Why didn't you tell me right away? I'm going there." "Nat, wait," she began, but he interrupted. "Don't tell me what to do," he snapped. "That's my father. You're the reason he's there. I'll handle it myself." He hung up, and Elizabeth stood in the kitchen, clutching the phone. She knew Nathan blamed her, and his anger was justified. She texted Sophia and Liam, but as usual, there was no response. The kids had shut her out, and she felt like an outsider in their world. The next day, she took the day off and drove to the prison, an hour outside Chicago. In the waiting room, which smelled of disinfectant, she waited, clutching another letter. The guard, a young man with tired eyes, shook his head. "Mrs. Wilson, he's in the infirmary," he said. "He's not seeing visitors, not even his family." "Please," her voice shook. "Tell him I'm here. I'm not leaving until I know he's okay." The guard sighed, taking the letter. "I'll try, but don't wait. He made it clear he doesn't want you." Elizabeth sank into a plastic chair, looking at the gray walls. She waited for 2 hours until the guard returned. "He refused," he said. "He didn't take the letter either." Elizabeth walked out into the parking lot, feeling depression creeping up on her. She sat in her car, clutching the steering wheel, and began to cry. David had suffered, and she couldn't even see him. Her guilt was like a shadow following her everywhere. Meanwhile, Nathan sped down the highway toward the house where he learned Michael had lived since leaving the hospital. The news of his father's attack had turned his world upside down. He parked outside the apartment building, his fists clenched with anger. Nathan wanted to rush into Michael's arms, to let out all the pain he felt for his father, for his family, for his ruined life. Through the window, he saw Michael, walking slowly with a cane. Anger was seething, but Nathan remembered his father's words before the trial. "Nat, don't let your anger get the better of you. Be better than I was." He had promised, and that stopped him. Nathan exhaled, started the engine, and drove away without opening the door. He returned home that evening to find Elizabeth cooking dinner, mashed potatoes, and chicken that no one ate. Nathan dropped his backpack on the floor, his face tired but his eyes bright. "Mom, have you been to jail?" he asked, opening the refrigerator. "What about Dad?" Elizabeth turned, wiping her hands. "He's in the infirmary. They wouldn't let me in. Nat, I tried." "Of course they didn't," he interrupted, his voice sharp. "Do you think he wants to see you, after everything you've done?" "I know it's my fault," she said, her voice breaking. "But I want to help. Tell me what I can do." "Help?" Nathan shook his head. "You've already done it. Dad's there because of you. Liam's fighting at school, Sophia won't leave her room, and I'm working so we don't lose power. Is that your help?" Elizabeth pressed her lips together, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Nat, I'm working. I'm looking for something better. I don't want you to." "That's enough," he raised his hand. "I don't want your words. Just don't bother Dad. You've done enough." He left, leaving her in the kitchen. Elizabeth sank into a chair, looking at the untouched dinner. Nathan was right. Liam and Sophia were suffering. The teachers reported that Sophia had withdrawn, skipping dances, and Liam had become aggressive, getting into fights. Elizabeth tried to talk to them, but they pushed her away. Nathan, despite his youth, had become their rock, sacrificing himself. She opened her laptop, checking the bill minus $150. Nathan paid for the water, and she felt a pang of guilt for burdening him. She applied to another store, but there was little hope. Her depression, which she had been numbing with pills, worsened. She imagined David, his pain, and each image was a blow. That night, she sat in her bedroom clutching the letter. David, please hold on. I know you hate me, but I'm praying for you. I'll never forgive myself. She sealed the envelope, knowing he'd come back. Lying in bed, she looked at the empty side where David slept. His scent was gone, but she clung to it. Memories. The next day, she called her lawyer. Mrs. Wilson, he's out of danger, Mark said. But he doesn't want to see you. Give him time. There is no time, she whispered. He suffered because of me. Then pray, Mark replied. That's all you can do. Elizabeth stacked boxes of cereal on a supermarket shelf, her movements practiced from years of work. The spring sun streamed through the display case, illuminating the dust motes in the air, but she barely noticed it. 5 years had passed since her infidelity had torn her family apart, and life had become a series of shifts, bills, and loneliness. Nathan, Liam, and Sophia were living their own lives, only occasionally home, their coldness a constant reminder of her guilt. The letters she sent David each week were returned unopened, and visits to the prison were rejected. But today, her phone buzzed, and a text from Kate changed everything. David is getting out. Today. Elizabeth froze, the cereal box almost falling out of her hands. She reread the text, feeling her heart pounding. David was free. After 5 years, after everything she had done, he was coming back. She asked her manager to let her go early, citing a family emergency, and raced home, hoping the kids knew by now. The Oak Park house greeted her with silence. She dropped her bag on the couch and dialed Nathan, who was now working for a construction firm while continuing his college education. His voice was tired when he answered. Mom, what? He asked, the instruments humming in the background. Nat, I heard about Dad, she said, trying to sound calm. He's getting out today. Did you know? The silence on the other end was heavy. Yeah, I knew, he finally answered. Grandpa told me. I'll pick him up with Liam and Sophia. Elizabeth clutched the phone, her voice shaking. Nat, I can come with you. I want to see him. No, he snapped. He doesn't want you there. And honestly, I don't either. Nat, please, she began, but he interrupted. Mom, that's enough, he said coldly. You've done your part. Let us meet Dad without this. He hung up, and Elizabeth sank onto the sofa, feeling her hopes crumble. She wanted to be there, to see David, to tell him how sorry she was. But his refusal, delivered through Nathan, was a blow. She called Sophia, but she didn't answer. Liam ignored her call too. The children had shut her out, and she couldn't blame them. That evening, she cooked dinner spaghetti with tomato sauce, hoping the children would be home. She set the table for 4, but the plates were empty. Around 9, the door opened and Nathan, Liam, and Sophia walked in. Their faces were animated, almost happy, something Elizabeth hadn't seen in years. Nathan was carrying a bag of groceries, Liam was holding a bottle of soda, and Sophia was laughing at something her brother had said. Guys, you're home, Elizabeth said, standing up. I made dinner. Do you want to eat? Nathan looked at her, his gaze softening but still cold. We ate with Dad, he said. He's okay, Mom. Tired, but okay. Elizabeth swallowed, her hands shaking. Where is he? Can I see him? Liam shook his head, setting his soda down. He's at his grandparents', and he's not ready to see you. Sophia, standing behind, added quietly, Daddy said we should talk to you. He said you're still our mom, and we have to respect that. Elizabeth froze, her eyes filling with tears. He said that? Yes, Sophia answered, but her voice was strained. But that doesn't mean it's okay. We're doing this for him, not for you. Nathan nodded, confirming. Daddy wants us to stick together. But Mom, don't expect us to go back to the way we were. You know why. Elizabeth nodded, wiping away tears. I know. Thank you for talking to me. I just want you to be happy. Liam shrugged, his face stony. We're trying, but it's hard when Dad is there for you. He went upstairs, Sophia following him. Nathan paused, looking at her. Mom, don't push us, he said. We'll talk, but give us time. Okay, she whispered. Nat, how is he, Dad? Nathan paused, his gaze softening. He's changed. Thinner, quieter, but he's still Dad. Said he wants to start over, without you. Elizabeth pressed her lips together, holding back a sob. I understand. Thank you for telling me. Nathan nodded and left, leaving her in the kitchen. She sat at the table, looking at the untouched dinner. David's words, relayed by the children, were a ray of hope. He thought she was a good mother, despite everything. But his refusal to see her was like a knife. She wanted to believe she could earn forgiveness, but their coldness was a reminder of how far she had come. The next day, she drove to David's parents' house, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. His father's house, a neat suburban cottage, was full of cars the family had gathered to celebrate his release. Elizabeth parked across the street, gripping the steering wheel. She saw Nathan and Sophia in the yard, laughing with their cousins. Liam was playing basketball with his uncle. And then she saw David, standing on the porch, thin and with his hair cut short, but still holding himself erect. He was smiling, hugging his sister. Elizabeth started to get out, but froze when his father noticed her car. He came over, his face stern. Liz, go away, he said. You're not wanted here. I just want to see him, she whispered, her voice shaking. Please, I won't disturb you. He doesn't want to see you, he snapped. Go away, for the sake of the children. Elizabeth nodded, tears welling up. She drove away without looking back. At home, she opened her laptop, checking her bill. Nathan had paid for the electricity again, and she felt a pang of guilt for burdening him. She worked at a store, but the pay was barely enough. She applied to a cafe, hoping for extra shifts, but there were no responses. That evening, Sophia walked into the kitchen where Elizabeth was making sandwiches. Mom, I'm staying overnight, she said without looking up. I have an exam tomorrow. Elizabeth smiled, trying not to spoil the moment. Okay, Sophie. Want me to make your favorite turkey? Sophia nodded, but her face remained covered. Okay, but I eat in the room. Of course, Elizabeth replied, feeling the warmth of that small step. Liam began to answer her questions too, albeit in monosyllables. Nathan was colder, but he didn't leave when she spoke. She sat at the table, looking at their empty plates. The children spoke to her, reluctantly, out of respect for David, but more than they had in years. She hoped it was a beginning, that time would heal. But Nathan's words, he wants to start over, without you, echoed in her head. She wanted to see David, to tell him how sorry she was, but she was afraid his hatred would destroy her. That night she wrote another letter. David, I heard you were free. I'm glad you're okay. Thank you for telling the kids to talk to me. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do. Oh, I will always love you. She sealed the envelope, but didn't mail it, knowing he wouldn't accept it. Lying in bed, she looked at the empty side where David slept. His release gave her hope, but their coldness reminded her that forgiveness was a long road, and she might never get there. Elizabeth parked outside Kate's house in suburban Chicago, her fingers shaking on the wheel. The spring air was thick with the scent of apple blossoms, and the street was silent, except for the boy next door pedaling his bike. It had been a month since David had been released from prison, and Elizabeth had learned from Sophia that he had moved in with Kate and her husband, Paul. She gathered up all the letters, dozens of envelopes returned unopened over 5 years, and decided to go. She needed to see him, to tell him how sorry she was, even if he rejected her again. The children Nathan, Liam, and Sophia had begun to talk to her at David's request, but their coldness was a reminder that forgiveness was a distant dream. She got out of the car, clutching the stack of letters, and took a deep breath. Kate's house, a two-story building with blue shutters, looked cozy. Children's toys lay on the lawn, and a pair of sneakers stood on the porch. Elizabeth knocked, and Kate answered the door, her face tense. "Liz, what are you doing here?" Kate asked, crossing her arms. "I told you he doesn't want to see you." "Kate, please." Elizabeth's voice shook. "I have to try. I'm not leaving until I talk to him." Kate sighed, but stepped back. "Okay, but if he tells you to leave, you leave. Got that?" Elizabeth nodded as she walked into the hallway. It smelled of freshly brewed coffee, and voices drifted in from the living room. She recognized Nathan, his deep voice, and then David's, husky but familiar. Her heart sank. Kate led her into the living room, where Nathan and David sat at the table, mugs and a plate of donuts in front of them. Nathan looked up, his face hard. David froze, his gaze as cold as a winter wind. "Liz," he said, his voice even but without warmth. "Why did you come?" Elizabeth clutched the letters, her fingers shaking. "David, I wanted to see you, to talk. Please give me 5 minutes." Nathan stood up, his fists clenched. "Mom," he said, "he doesn't want to. Go away." "Nat, wait." David raised his hand, not taking his eyes off Elizabeth. "Let him speak, but not for long." Elizabeth stepped closer, her voice weak. "David, I know I ruined everything. I betrayed you, the children, our family. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I live with it every minute." She held out the letters. "I wrote to you. All these years, I wanted to tell you how much I loved you, how guilty I am." David looked at the letters but did not take them. His face remained motionless. Only the corner of his mouth twitched. "Do you think words will change anything?" he asked quietly. 5 years, Liz. 5 years I paid for your choice. The children paid. And you write letters?" Elizabeth swallowed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know I can't fix this, but I'm trying. For the kids, for myself. I want to be better." He shook his head, his voice hardening. "You're late. I don't want your apologies. I don't want you in my life." Nathan looked at his father, his eyes full of pain. He saw David's hand shaking, his voice breaking despite its coldness. Elizabeth stepped closer, her words desperate. "David, please. I'm not asking you to come back. Just give me a chance to explain. I love you." David stood up, his face twisted. "Love? You call that love? You were with someone else in our house, Liz. You broke everything we had." He took the letters, but instead of opening them, he shoved them back at her. "Take them. I don't want them, and I don't want you." Elizabeth took the letters, her hands shaking. "David, Go away," he said, his voice cold as steel. "For the children, for me, just go away." Kate stepped forward, her tone soft but firm. "Liz, it's time. You heard." Elizabeth nodded, wiping away tears. She looked at Nathan for support, but he turned away, his face stony. She stepped out onto the porch, feeling her legs buckle. She heard footsteps near the car and turned. David was standing on the driveway, his face stern. "You forgot this," he said, holding out the letters. His voice was empty, emotionless. "Don't come back, Liz." Elizabeth took the letters, sobs breaking out. "David, please talk to me. I can't live without you." He shook his head and walked into the house without looking back. Nathan stood in the doorway, his eyes full of pain for his father. He looked at Elizabeth, but did not move, did not say a word. She got into the car, clutching the letters, and drove away, feeling her last hope fading. At home, Elizabeth sat at the kitchen table, looking at a stack of envelopes. She opened one, rereading it. "David, I will never forgive myself for what I did." Tears fell onto the paper, but she did not wipe them away. She wanted to believe that he would read it, understand, but his coldness was clearer than any words. Later, Sophia walked into the kitchen, her backpack slung over her shoulder. "Mom, I'm staying for dinner," she said without looking up, "but I eat in my room." Elizabeth smiled, trying not to spoil the moment. "Okay, Sophie, I'll make you a pizza with pepperoni, just the way you like it." Sophia nodded, but paused. "Daddy said to be gentle with you," she added quietly. "He wants us to be a family, but it's hard." Elizabeth clasped her hands, her voice weak. "I know, Sophie. Thank you for trying." Sophia left, and Elizabeth began cooking, feeling the warmth of the move. Liam began to answer questions, albeit briefly. Nathan was colder, but he did not leave when she spoke. Their communication, however strained, was a gift from David, and she clung to it. The next day Kate called, her voice cautious. "Liz, I heard you were here yesterday," she said. "You weren't supposed to come." "David. He's building a new life." Elizabeth clutched the phone, her throat tightening. "A new life? What do you mean?" Kate hesitated. "He met a woman, Anna. They knew each other before prison, and after he got out, they became close. She's expecting a baby, Liz." Elizabeth froze, the world crumbling. "A baby so soon?" she whispered. "He's starting a new family?" "Yes," Kate replied. "Liz, he's not coming back. He wants to move on. Give him that." Elizabeth nodded, though Kate couldn't see. "I understand. Thank you for telling me." She hung up and sat down, looking at the letters. David had found happiness with Anna, with the child she could never give him. She wanted to hate him, but she couldn't. He deserved it after everything she'd done. Nathan returned that evening, his face tired from his shift. He noticed the letters and frowned. "Mom, again?" he asked. "Dad said he didn't want them." "I know," she answered quietly. "Nat, I heard about Anna, about the baby. Did you know?" Nathan nodded, his gaze softening. "Yeah, she's good. Dad, he's smiling with her. For the first time in years." Elizabeth pressed her lips together, holding back tears. "I'm happy for him. I really am." Nathan looked at her, his voice quieter. "Mom, he doesn't hate you, but he can't be with you. Accept that." She nodded, wiping away tears. "I'm trying, Nat. Thank you for talking to me." He shrugged and walked away, leaving her with the letters. Elizabeth sat in silence, feeling the hope of forgiveness fading. David had started a new life, and she was left with the fragments of the old one. The children spoke to her, but their coldness reminded her that she had lost their trust. This meeting with David was the last, and she knew she had to let him go, even if it tore her heart apart. Elizabeth arranged apples on the counter of the Oak Park supermarket, her hands moving automatically. The morning light flooded the display cases, and the smell of freshly baked goods from the aisle next door mingled with the hum of shoppers. 5 years had passed since her affair had torn her family apart, and life had become a series of work shifts, unpaid bills, and the occasional conversation with her children. Nathan, Liam, and Sophia had spoken to her at the request of David, who had been released from prison 2 months earlier, but their words were cold, their eyes distant. Elizabeth clung to those moments, hoping for forgiveness, but the news of David's new life with Anna and their future child was a reminder that he was gone forever. The phone vibrated in her apron pocket, and Elizabeth answered when she saw Kate's number. "Liz, are you at work?" Her sister's voice was worried. "It's about Nathan. He's in the hospital." Elizabeth froze, the apple falling from her hands. "In the hospital? What happened?" "Not physically," Kate clarified. "Psychiatric hospital. He had a breakdown. Stress, anger, he couldn't handle it. David's with him, but I thought you should know." Elizabeth clutched the phone, her throat dry. "Nathan, how? Why didn't you tell me?" "He didn't mean to," Kate replied. "Liz, he blames you for a lot of things. But David's there, helping. Go if you want." Elizabeth took the day off and rushed to a clinic on the north side of Chicago. In a waiting room that smelled of antiseptic, she waited for a nurse to check her paperwork. David emerged an hour later, his face tired but calm. He was thinner than he had been before prison, but his eyes, though aged, were still kind. "Liz," he said, his voice even, "why are you here?" "I found out about Nathan," she said, her voice shaking. "David, I want to help. Please tell me what's wrong with him." David looked at her, his gaze softening. "He's overwhelmed. Work, school, caring for Liam and Sophia, it's broken him. He lost it, screamed, and almost got into a fight with a colleague. The doctors say it's years of stress, but he'll be fine." Elizabeth clasped her hands, tears stinging her eyes. "It's my fault. I made him take on too much." David nodded, but his voice was firm. "Yes, yours. But he's strong, Liz. I'm with him. I'm taking over the family so he can just be a son and a brother. You shouldn't interfere." "I want to see him," she whispered. "Please." "Not now," he said. "He's not ready. Give him time." Elizabeth nodded, wiping away tears. David left, and she stood in the waiting room, guilt weighing on her chest. Nathan had suffered because of her betrayal, David's arrest. Years of fighting for their family had fallen on his shoulders. She wanted to be there, but his anger was a wall she couldn't break through. At home, she cooked dinner Sophia's favorite lasagna, but the kids didn't come. Sophia texted, "Staying at Emma's." Liam didn't respond. Elizabeth sat at the empty table, staring at the food growing cold. She opened her laptop and, on impulse, wrote a post online to a community about family drama. She poured out her story: the betrayal, David's arrest, the pain of her children, her guilt. "I broke up a family," she wrote, "and now I live with it every day. How can I find forgiveness?" She hit publish, hoping for a response, but immediately regretted it. The next day, Nathan came home, his face pale but his eyes clear. He dropped his backpack by the door and looked at Elizabeth standing in the kitchen. "Mom, did you see what you did?" he asked, his voice sharp. Elizabeth frowned, wiping her hands. "Nat, what are you talking about? Are you okay?" "Your post," he snapped, taking out his phone. "People at college are talking about it. You put our lives all over the internet. How could you?" Elizabeth froze, her cheeks pale. "Nat, I just wanted to share. Find someone who would understand." "Share?" He raised his voice. "This is not your grief. This is ours. Dad is in prison. Liam, Sophia, and I are in hell. And you write a post for likes? This is selfishness, Mom. I didn't mean it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Nat, I deleted it. I didn't mean to hurt you." "You never mean to," he said, his voice breaking. "But you do. Dad said to talk to you, and I tried. But things like that, they make it worse." Elizabeth took a step toward him, but he stepped back. "Nat, I'm sorry. I want to be better. For you." "Then stop thinking about yourself," he said coldly. "Dad helps me, Liam, Sophia. He takes care of the family so I can live my life. And you're just a reminder of why it all fell apart." He went upstairs, leaving her in the kitchen. Elizabeth sank into a chair, clutching her head. She had deleted the post, but Nathan's words burned. She wanted to make amends, but every step was a mistake. Her depression, numbed by the pills, flared up again. She imagined Nathan in the clinic, his anger, his pain, all because of her. A week later, Sophia came home, her face tired from exams. "Mom, I'll eat with you," she said, sitting down at the table. "But no talking, okay?" Elizabeth nodded, setting down her plate of sandwiches. "Okay, Sophie, thanks for staying." Sophia ate in silence, but her presence was a small victory. Liam, too, began to hang around the house, answering questions briefly, but without malice. Nathan was colder, but once he left a note: "Paid for internet. Find a better job." Elizabeth applied to the office, hoping to return to accounting, but there were no answers. Her salary at the store was barely enough, and Nathan still covered part of the bills. She called Kate, seeking advice. "Liz, Nathan's right. Kate said. Your post was a mistake. The kids are already on edge. Focus on them, not your guilt. I'm trying, Elizabeth said, her voice breaking. But they only see me as a betrayal. And David, he's with Anna, with the baby. I've lost him. You lost him a long time ago, Kate said softly. But the kids are still here. Work on it. That's all you have. Elizabeth hung up, looking at the picture of the family on the shelf, laughing on Lake Michigan. She clutched the frame, guilt mingling with hope. David had helped Nathan by taking over the family, and that had given him a chance to be just a son. Elizabeth wanted the same thing, to be a mother her children could respect. But reuniting with David, she realized, was impossible. His new life with Anna and the baby was a wall she couldn't climb over. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.